The Mockery captain, Alina Vasquez, stood before the massive viewing port of the shuttle as it approached Nexus Prime Station. The structure was beyond anything humanity had ever built. A crystalline fortress that stretched for hundreds of kilometers through space. Geometric patterns of light danced across its surface, and ships from dozens of different species moved around it like insects around a glowing flower. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that it was here, she felt small and uncertain. Impressive, isn't it? Admiral David Chen stepped beside her, his weathered face reflecting the station's glow. Chen was Earth's most experienced military strategist, a man who had spent his entire career preparing for this day. Hard to believe we're actually here. Behind them, Dr. Sarah Kim was reviewing her tablet for the 100th time. The young physicist had been chosen to explain Earth's military technology to the Galactic Council. Her hands shook slightly as she flipped through the presentation slides. "Admiral, are you sure about this approach? Maybe we should emphasize our defensive capabilities instead of our offensive weapons." "Sarah, we've been over this," Chen replied. Patiently, "The Council wants to see what Earth can contribute to galactic security. We show them our strengths, not our fears." The shuttle docked with a soft vibration, and the airlock hissed open. A figure waited for them in the corridor beyond, tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to be made of living crystal. This was Zephyr, the Council's diplomatic liaison, and his species had been traveling between stars when humanity was still learning to make fire. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," Zephyr said, his voice carrying musical harmonics that no human throat could produce. "The Council is eager to evaluate your species' potential contribution to our collective defense." They walked through corridors that defied human understanding of architecture. The walls curved impossibly, and gravity seemed to shift direction at random intervals. Other beings moved past them, some floating, others walking on surfaces that appeared to be walls or ceilings. Vasquez tried not to stare at the diversity of life forms, but it was overwhelming. The council chamber was a vast spherical room with no apparent floor or ceiling. Representatives from hundreds of species floated in the space, each surrounded by their own personal gravity field. The humans were guided to a platform near the center, where they could address the assembly. Zephyr's form brightened, and his voice carried throughout the chamber. "The Council recognizes the delegation from Earth. You may present your species' military capabilities." Dr. Kim activated her holographic projector, and images of Earth's military filled the space around them. Fighter jets screamed across digital skies. Tanks rolled across virtual battlefields, and submarines glided through holographic oceans. The presentation showed Earth's nuclear arsenal, its missile defense systems, and its conventional forces. Earth's military doctrine is based on kinetic weapons and chemical propulsion, Kim explained, her voice growing stronger as she fell into her scientific rhythm. "We use projectile weapons that fire solid ammunition at high velocity. Our missiles carry explosive warheads over long distances. Our largest weapons harness nuclear fusion and fission for devastating effect." The reaction was immediate and unmistakable. A sound like wind chimes being shattered echoed through the chamber as several crystalline beings began to laugh. Larger creatures made deep rumbling sounds that might have been amusement. Even the more humanoid species seemed to be struggling to contain their mirth. A massive reptilian being floated forward, his scales shifting color from deep green to bright gold. This was Vorthok, Supreme Commander of the Draconic Hegemony and one of the most respected military leaders in the galaxy. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of 1,000 conquered worlds. Kinetic weapons, he said, the words dripping with disdain. Your species still throws rocks at its enemies. Our children play with more sophisticated toys. Another being, this one resembling a geometric arrangement of flowing energy, added its voice to the criticism. Chemical propulsion. We abandoned such primitive methods 50,000 years ago. Your fastest ships would take centuries to cross a single star system. Zephyr raised a crystalline hand, and the chamber fell silent. The Council appreciates Earth's enthusiasm, but your technology is indeed quite primitive. Your kinetic weapons would be ineffective against modern shielding systems. Your chemical explosives would barely damage our cargo vessels. Vasquez felt heat rising in her cheeks. She had served in 3 different wars, had seen the devastating power of human weapons firsthand. But here, surrounded by beings who could manipulate gravity and energy as easily as breathing, Earth's military might seemed like a collection of antiques. However, Zephyr continued, the Council recognizes that all species have their place in galactic society. Earth will be welcomed as a support member. Your vessels can transport supplies, carry messages, and provide maintenance services to our military fleets. The dismissal was clear. Earth would be the janitors and delivery drivers of galactic civilization. Admiral Chen stepped forward, his expression calm despite the insult. We accept the Council's decision, he said formally. But we request the opportunity to prove our worth when the situation demands it. Vorthok's scales shifted to a pattern that might have indicated amusement. Human, the galaxy faces threats you cannot imagine. The Devourers lurk in the void between stars, consuming entire civilizations. When they return, and they will return, your species will need protection, not provide it. The mention of the Devourers sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. Vasquez noticed that even the most confident-looking beings seemed to shift uncomfortably. At the name, whatever these Devourers were, they frightened even the advanced civilizations of the galaxy. The Devourers are an ancient enemy, Zephyr explained, his harmonics taking on a darker tone. They appear every few millennia, sweeping through populated sectors like a plague. Their bioorganic ships adapt to our weapons, evolving countermeasures faster than we can develop new attacks. They consume entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty space. Dr. Kim leaned forward with interest. Bioorganic ships. They're alive. In a sense, Vorthok replied. They grow their vessels rather than building them. Each ship is a living organism, capable of healing damage, adapting to threats, and reproducing. They are the reason the Council maintains such vast fleets. The session continued for another hour, with various species explaining what roles humans might be allowed to fill. They could serve as technicians on the less important ships, transport non-critical supplies, and provide translation services between species that didn't trust each other. But they would never be allowed to fight alongside the real warriors of the galaxy. As the humans left the chamber, Vasquez walked beside Admiral Chen in silence. The corridor seemed darker now, the alien architecture more intimidating. She had come here hoping to see Earth take its place among the stars as an equal, but instead they had been relegated to the role of cosmic servants. Admiral, she said quietly, that was humiliating. Chen nodded grimly. It was meant to be. But Alina, did you notice something interesting about their reaction to kinetic weapons? Vasquez thought back to the presentation. They laughed at us, called our weapons primitive. Exactly. They laughed because they don't understand. These beings have spent millennia perfecting energy weapons, shield technology, and adaptive systems. They've forgotten the fundamental principles of physics. Dr. Kim caught up with them, her tablet still clutched in her hands. Admiral, what do you mean? Chen stopped walking and turned to face both women. Sarah, what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? That's a paradox, sir. In reality, either the force isn't truly unstoppable, or the object isn't truly immovable. Right. Now, what happens when a bioorganic ship that can adapt to energy weapons meets a tungsten rod traveling at relativistic speeds? Kim's eyes widened as she understood. The ship can't adapt to pure kinetic force. It would be like trying to evolve armor against physics itself. The Council thinks we're primitive because we still use kinetic weapons, Chen continued. Spent so long perfecting their energy-based technology that they've forgotten the simple, brutal effectiveness of mass times velocity. Vasquez felt a spark of hope. You're saying our primitive weapons might actually be effective against these devourers? I'm saying that while the Council has been developing increasingly sophisticated ways to throw energy at their enemies, we've been perfecting the art of throwing very large, very fast objects. And when the devourers come, they're going to learn that evolution has no answer to a mountain of metal moving at a significant fraction of the speed of light. They boarded their shuttle for the journey back to Earth as Nexus Prime Station fell. Away behind them, Vasquez looked out at the stars with new eyes. The galaxy had dismissed humanity as primitive, relegated them to support roles in the great cosmic drama. But perhaps being underestimated was exactly where humanity needed to be. Chen was already making plans. She could see it in his eyes. The Council had given Earth access to their star charts, their communication networks, their supply lines. They had shared information about the Devourers, thinking that humans needed to understand the threats they would face. What they hadn't realized was that they had just given humanity everything it needed to prepare for war. The journey back to Earth would take several days. During that time, Chen would be composing reports, making recommendations, and beginning the process that would transform humanity from a dismissed support species into something the galaxy had never seen before. The Council had spoken, and Earth had been found wanting, but the Council had never seen what humans were capable of when they were angry. The revelation 6 months after the humiliation at Nexus Prime, the galaxy learned what it meant to underestimate humanity. The alert came through the quantum communication network at 0347 hours, Earth Standard Time. Admiral Chen was in his office at Luna Command when the priority transmission lit up his screens with symbols that made his blood run cold. The have returned, the message read. All Council members are required to commit every available vessel to the defense of the Crimson Nebula sector. The survival of galactic civilization depends on our immediate response. Chen activated his secure communication channel. Captain Webb, report to my office immediately. Bring Lieutenant Colonel Torres with you. Within minutes, Captain Marcus Webb entered the office, followed by Lieutenant Colonel Anna Torres. Webb was a career military officer who had spent the last 6 months preparing for this moment. Torres was humanity's foremost expert on kinetic weapons, a woman who could calculate trajectories and impact forces in her head while under fire. They're back, Chen said without preamble. The Devourers have emerged from dark space, and they're hitting the Crimson Nebula with everything they have. Webb studied the tactical display that Chen had activated. The nebula was a strategic choke point, controlling access to 3 major star systems. If it fell, the Devourers would have a clear path to the galaxy's core worlds. What's the current situation? Torres asked. bad, Chen replied. The Council sent their primary battle fleet to engage. They had over 800 ships, including some of the most advanced vessels in the galaxy. The Devourers appeared with a force of unknown size and composition. The display updated with new information. Torres whistled low as she read the casualty reports. They've lost 300 ships in the first 4 hours of engagement. That's not a battle, that's a massacre. Gets worse, Chen continued. The Devourers are using new tactics. Their bioorganic ships are adapting to Council weapons faster than ever before. Energy shields that have protected the galaxy for millennia are being penetrated within minutes. Weapon systems that have worked for thousands of years are becoming useless. Webb leaned forward, and they want every available ship. Every available ship, Chen confirmed, including Earth's cargo vessels and support craft. They're desperate enough to call in the janitors. Torres grinned, and it was not a pleasant expression. Time to show them what human janitors can do. The ex-Prometheus had been built in the asteroid belt, far from the prying eyes of Council observers. Officially, it was listed as a heavy cargo transport designed to move supplies between Earth colonies. In reality, it was the most devastating weapon humanity had ever created. The ship was 15 kilometers long and built around a single purpose: to accelerate very large objects to very high speeds and then throw them at targets. The main weapon was a magnetic accelerator that ran the entire length of the vessel, capable of launching projectiles at 15% of the speed of light. Secondary weapons included dozens of smaller railguns, missile launchers, and point defense systems. "She's beautiful," Webb said as they approached the ship. The Prometheus didn't look beautiful to most eyes. It was a utilitarian design, all angles and armor plating. But to someone who understood its purpose, it was the most elegant weapon ever conceived. Torres ran her hands along the hull as they boarded. 3 years of construction, using every trick we learned from Council technology. But the core concept is pure human engineering. The bridge was spacious but austere, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Webb took his position in the captain's chair while Torres moved to the weapons station. Around them, the crew of 200 humans prepared for humanity's first real space battle. "Helm, set course for the Crimson Nebula," Webb ordered. "Maximum acceleration." The journey to the battle zone took 18 hours. During that time, they received updates from the Council fleet. The situation was growing worse by the hour. The Devourers had revealed new types of bioorganic ships, massive creatures that seemed to be part vessel and part living organism. They absorbed energy weapons and used the power to fuel their own attacks. Analysis of enemy capabilities, Torres reported from her station. Council forces are reporting that the Devourers are adapting to their weapons within minutes of first contact. Plasma cannons that were effective in the first engagement are useless by the second. Energy shields are being penetrated by attacks. That should have been harmless. "What about kinetic weapons?" Webb asked. "The Council doesn't use kinetic weapons, sir. They consider them primitive. The Devourers have never faced a pure kinetic attack." Webb nodded. "Then they're about to learn something new." The Prometheus dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Crimson Nebula. The scene that greeted them was like something from a nightmare. The space around the nebula was filled with the debris of destroyed ships, twisted metal and exotic materials glowing with residual energy. The surviving Council vessels were scattered across the sector, fighting desperately against an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. The Devourers were unlike anything in the galaxy's database. Their ships were organic, curves and flowing lines, looking more like sea creatures than spacecraft. They moved with predatory grace, surrounding council vessels and tearing them apart with weapons that seemed to be living tentacles. "Communications, contact the council command ship," Webb ordered. Zephyr-S crystalline form appeared on the main screen, but his usual composure was gone. Cracks ran through his crystal skin, and his harmonics were discordant with panic. "Human vessel, you must retreat immediately. The Devourers are beyond anything we have faced before. They are consuming our ships, learning from our weapons, growing stronger." "Understood, Council Leader," Webb replied calmly. "Request permission to engage the enemy." "Your cargo ship cannot help us," Zephyr said desperately. "These creatures have adapted to our most advanced weapons. Your primitive systems will be useless." "Permission to engage," Webb repeated firmly. There was a pause. Then, with the resignation of a being who had run out of options, Zephyr nodded. "Granted. May whatever gods you worship have mercy on your souls." The communication ended. Webb looked round the bridge at his crew. They were all volunteers, all believers in what they were doing. In the next few minutes, they would either prove humanity's worth or die trying. "Weapons, target the largest enemy vessel," Webb ordered. "Full charge on the main gun." Torres worked at her console, power flowing from the ship's fusion reactors into the magnetic accelerators. Target acquired. Projectile loaded. Mass, 50 tons. Composition, tungsten carbide with depleted uranium core. The main weapon charged with a low hum that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull. On the tactical display, the targeting system, locked onto a massive Devourer ship that was in the process of tearing apart a Council Dreadnought. "Fire," Webb ordered. The railgun discharged with a flash of electromagnetic energy that lit up the nebula. The projectile, a 50-ton rod of the hardest materials humanity could create, crossed the distance to the target in less than 2 seconds. It struck the Devourer ship at 15% of the speed of light. *. The impact released more energy than humanity's largest nuclear weapons. The bioorganic ship, protected by adaptive armor that had laughed off the galaxy's most sophisticated energy weapons, simply vaporized. The shockwave from the impact damaged 2 other Devourer ships and sent debris flying in all directions. For a moment, the battle stopped. Every ship in the sector, Council and Devourer alike, seemed to pause as they processed what had just happened. Then the Devourers turned their attention to the human vessel. "Incoming," Torres reported. 12 enemy ships moving to intercept. "Secondary weapons, engage at will," Webb ordered. "Show them what human engineering can do." The Prometheus unleashed its full arsenal. Dozens of railguns fired in sequence, sending tungsten rods screaming through space. Missiles launched from hidden ports, each one carrying not explosive warheads, but solid penetrators designed to punch through armor. Point defense systems activated, creating a web of kinetic projectiles around the ship. The attacking Devourers tried to adapt, their bioorganic hulls shifting and changing as they had done against energy weapons, but there was nothing to adapt to. The human weapons were pure physics, mass and velocity combined in the most fundamental way possible. The Devourer ships, designed to absorb and counter energy attacks, had no defense against objects that simply wanted to transfer kinetic energy on impact. One by one, the attacking ships were destroyed. Not disabled, not damaged, but completely annihilated by the simple, brutal force of human weaponry. The other Devourers began to retreat. Their hive mind, apparently recognizing that they had encountered something beyond their ability to counter. Pursuit. Course, Webb ordered. They wanted to see what humans could do in a fight. Let's give them a demonstration they'll never forget. The Prometheus accelerated after the fleeing Devourers, its weapon systems reloading for another barrage. Behind them, the surviving Council ships watched in amazement as humanity's primitive technology proved more effective than the galaxy's most advanced weapons. Zephyr-S form reappeared on the communication screen, his harmonics now carrying notes of awe and something that might have been fear. Human vessel, how is this possible? Your weapons are primitive, your technology is crude. Council leader, Webb replied, you spent thousands of years perfecting energy weapons and adaptive defenses. You forgot the most important lesson in warfare. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best solutions. The battle continued for another 6 hours. The Prometheus methodically hunted down every Devourer ship in the sector, each one falling to the simple effectiveness of kinetic weapons. By the time the last enemy vessel was destroyed, the nebula was clear of threats for the first time in recorded history. The aftermath was a mixture of celebration and unease. The Council had been saved, but they had also learned that their newest member possessed weapons that could potentially threaten any ship in the galaxy. The species they had dismissed as primitive had just demonstrated capabilities that made them the most dangerous military force in known space. Admiral Chen received the final report at Lunar Command. The Devourers had been defeated, their invasion force completely destroyed, but more importantly, the galaxy's perception of humanity had changed forever. They were no longer seen as primitive support species, but as a military power that could stand against threats that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. What's our status with the Council? Captain Vasquez asked as she reviewed the battle. Reports, complicated, Chen replied. They're grateful, but they're also terrified. They've realized that kinetic weapons are the one thing their defenses can't handle. Every ship in the galaxy is vulnerable to what we just demonstrated, and the Devourers gone for now. But they'll be back eventually, and when they return, they'll have adapted to energy weapons again, but they'll never be able to adapt to physics itself. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson about underestimating humanity. The species that threw rocks at their enemies had just proven that sometimes throwing rocks was exactly the right answer. The stars themselves had learned to fear the simple, brutal effectiveness of human engineering, and in the depths of space, where the Devourers retreated to lick their wounds and plan their next attack, an ancient hive mind struggled to understand how their perfect adaptation had been defeated by creatures who still fought with kinetic weapons. They would return, as they always did, but they would never again underestimate the species that had turned the art of throwing objects into the galaxy's most feared military doctrine. The Empire had spoken first, dismissing humanity as primitive, but Earth's Dreadnought had delivered. The final word, written in tungsten and physics across the void of space. Asterisk.